can zoom out, and now I need this one, which is very similar to the previous. So if I highlight that, this is 29 pixels. Everything is pretty much the same on this as far as this next row's content. It's just that transparency. And that was, I forgot, how many was that? 29 pixels. I don't need to set a BG color because the inside of my table is already this color because I set it way up here on this TD. So if I save it and I refresh it, now you have that row. So I'm just building it chunk by chunk. So we have that third section now, right here, which is kind of hard to see, but it's there. And the next part is this middle fourth section, but that's a little bit more complicated. I'm going to go ahead and jump down and do the fifth and the sixth. The fifth is really easy because it's the exact same thing as this third section I just made. So all I need to do, I can just copy it, and I can just replace that whole fourth section. The final section is very similar, this down here, to what I made here, but it's not exactly the same because I have text in it. So I can't just put a transparent GIF in it because I want this text. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it for now, and then I'm going to replace. So what it needs to have in it is, instead of this, it needs to have this text here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my text, and I'll paste it there. And if I save it and preview it, you can see I now have this section and I have that, and it's not quite loading right. Not quite. But it's getting there. Not quite sure where that A is coming from. There we go. So there is a special character to make that copyright symbol without having the error in it, and I will add that in a little bit later. But you can see it's there, but it doesn't look right. So I need to center it and make sure that I close that tag out. And I need to change the font size because I don't want it that big. So we'll do font size equals -1, and we'll do color equals, I don't know, what color is that? If we, well, I don't even do it that way. We have the color right here. So that is this color, so I'll copy that and drop that in. And I'll save it and hit refresh. And you can see it's much closer than before. Now what I'll also do is, you can see here I've got a good amount of space on top and bottom, and I don't here. So I'm going to add a line break in front of it and a line break behind it. And if I save it, it's closer, but not quite. It didn't create the second line break. Well, it did, but just one, and so it ended that line, which it already had the space. So now if I refresh it, you can see it's closer. The spacing isn't exact the way that I have it here, but you get the idea. If I want it to be exact, I could build a table inside of this, and that's how I would get it exact. So to do that, we'll go ahead and get rid of this line break and those line breaks, and we'll build a table inside of this. Because it's just a one cell table, I don't really want to add like all the extra spacing, because to me that will just be more confusing. So I'm going to keep this spacing short and just wrapped around it, because I don't really need to find this area, and I don't want it to get in the way later on. Well, I guess it's a 3-cell table, but it basically looks just like one. And down here we have, we'll close that out and make a new one. Right, that all looks decent. And we need that down there as well. Now how big is this spacing? So once again we'll zoom in using my marquee tool, and I will measure about how big it is. So about 15 pixels. And below it is a little bit more, about 18 pixels. That's pretty normal. We often put slightly more above or below than above. It just looks right that way. So in this one goes 15, and in this one goes 18. And 15. I'm going to do a little bit of formatting on this just so it's a little bit more logical for me. So if we save it and we refresh it, you can see it's closer, and I made an error right there. Oh, /fonts. And center needs to be right there. Maybe. So it's not loading up all the way across. Let's make sure that we set the width as well on this table. Save it. Refresh it. We're still getting kind of a weird setup there. So we could spend a whole bunch of time trying to fix it, or I could just center this table, and I think that will fix it. This is one of the problems with table-based layouts, which is why it's not recommended anymore. Sometimes you get little weird little bugs like that you have to fix. There we go. The table inside is still weird, but hey, it's working. So now I just need to build what's inside. So it's just going to be one table with with one row and 3 columns inside of it. And remember, this will probably be its own little table too. So I'm not going to do all of that in this video. I'm just going to set up that next table inside of here. So I'm going to add another comment just so I can find it more easily in the future when I decide to add the next part. So here's my comments. And I want this actually inside of this, which doesn't really matter, but it makes it easier for me to find it. Once again, using white space in the way that I find the most helpful. So we'll do table again, and we want these settings. And it's just going to be one row. And it will be 3 columns. So I save it and I refresh it, and we don't really see anything yet. So just to try to make sure that it's looking the way that I think it looks, I'm going to go ahead and just toss in some color in here just to make sure. So we'll just go ahead and toss in RGB. So FF0000 Close that. And this. And this. And we will make this one green. And we'll make this one blue. So if we refresh it, we still don't see anything. There's no content actually for it to color. Did I actually save this? There we go. So there's no content in there. It doesn't have anything to make. So what I need to do is I need to add spacers in there once again. So now I have spacers, and now you can see it. Now the distances are not accurate, so if I want to figure out those distances, once again we'll come in here, we'll use my marquee tool, and we can see this is almost 200, well just over 200. So I'm going to go ahead and make that, well, let's make sure we're being accurate. So I'll zoom in a little bit closer. And so that's 203 pixels. Move this over. This should be 37 pixels. And one more. We could do the math to find this, but we can also just use our marquee tool to try to make sure it's accurate. Oh, little image there. Find our gray border. There we go, 784. Which doesn't make sense. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put that in there, and we're going to save it, and we're going to refresh it. There we go, so that matches. So when I did this earlier, when I originally decided that this was going to be 700 pixels across, I made a mistake. I just estimated and I didn't measure. And I did that just visually. And when I did that, it was zoomed out at 66%, and I didn't realize that. And so that's why all my other measurements were off. Which is why this was loading weird way over there, and why this is not the full width. So there's the issue. But I can adjust those later. But you get the general idea. So I've got my three areas here. So the menu here, the spacer there, and this there. I'll go ahead and actually take out the color for green because it actually won't even have a spot. And now this middle spacer is actually ready. That part's ready. Now I just need to add this, I need to add that, and fix my measurements. And then we're good. So that should get you started. And in the next video, I'll work on building those in.